Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Oh, okay.
Today we're going to be looking at what seemed like a really promising venture
Oh,
in sustainable agriculture, but things took a bit of a turn, and we're going to be kind of looking at how this potential investment scheme kind of unfolded. So we're going to be examining the Clean Food Growing Company Limited, or TCFGC,
okay.
and trying to understand how a company with seemingly so much potential could end up raising so many red flags.
Right.
Joining me today to kind of navigate this whole complex financial web is an expert in insolvency and financial investigations.
Oh, great.
It's great to have you here with us.
Glad to be here. Yeah, I think this is a case that really highlights the importance of due diligence and really just critical thinking when it comes to, making investments.
Absolutely. So let's start with what we know.
Okay.
TCFGC presented itself as this innovative company,
Yeah.
really focused on sustainable agriculture. And they seem to have a strong leadership team, a really compelling vision for the future of food production.
Right.
But what's the reality beneath that initial impression?
Well, I mean, the reality is a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
While TCFGC did do, a great job of marketing themselves, their leadership and financial stability, it raises some serious concerns.
Yeah, and at the center of these concerns is a man named Abbey King Kawaja, who became a director at TCFGC in April 2023.
Right.
What makes his involvement so troubling?
Well, what's particularly alarming is that just a month before, joining TCFGC, Kawaja was implicated in this court case, Fraser versus Kawaja,
Wow.
where he was found guilty of drafting a fraudulent will to deceive beneficiaries.
Wow.
And the judge even referred the matter to the police.
Wait, so he was found guilty of fraud,
Yeah.
and then weeks later,
Yeah.
he's put in charge of a company that's handling investor funds.
Right.
That's a huge red flag right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and it gets even more concerning when you look at, Kawaja's financial situation.
Okay.
He was actually facing bankruptcy proceedings at the same time that investors were being encouraged to, put their money into TCFGC.
So not only did he have this legal judgment against him for fraud,
Right.
but he was also in financial distress.
Yeah.
How is it possible that someone with this kind of background was able to lead a company
Yeah.
that was actively soliciting investments from people?
I mean, that's one of the key questions that we're going to be exploring today.
Yeah.
It speaks to a potential lack of oversight and due diligence on the part of, those who are promoting TCFGC.
Yeah, and one of those promoters was New Capital Inc., or NCL.
Yeah.
They played a major role in kind of, marketing TCFGC to investors.
Right.
But their tactics were far from transparent.
Yeah.
They even went so far as to use the name and image of Duncan Bannatyne,
Right.
a well-known entrepreneur and investor.
Yeah, NCL heavily promoted, TCFGC using Duncan Bannatyne's, name and reputation as a way to attract investors.
Right.
And they actually advertised him as the company's non-executive director.
Which is incredibly misleading because, from what I understand, Bannatyne has publicly stated that he has absolutely no connection with TCFGC.
Exactly.
Whatsoever.
Bannatyne has denied any involvement with the company.
Wow.
Stating that he was never a non-executive director, had no knowledge of their operations, and never gave his consent for his name to be used, in their marketing materials.
So they were essentially capitalizing on Bannatyne's reputation
Right.
without his knowledge or permission to lure investors into TCFGC.
Yeah.
That's incredibly deceptive.
It is, and it really raises serious questions about NCL's ethical conduct and their commitment to transparency, with potential investors.
You would think that a company responsible for advising investors would have at least done their due diligence and uncovered, Kawaja's past legal and financial trouble.
Absolutely. Even a basic background check would have revealed, Kawaja's fraud conviction and his ongoing bankruptcy proceeding.
Wow.
I mean, this information was publicly available.
So instead of thoroughly vetting the individuals behind TCFGC,
Yeah.
they were more focused on aggressively marketing the company.
Right.
And using misleading tactics.
It seems that way. And there's another player in this, kind of complex story that we need to discuss.
Okay.
Westbrook Associates.
Okay.
They were also involved in, marketing TCFGC, but their operations are shrouded in secrecy.
What makes Westbrook Associates so mysterious?
Well, for starters, they're registered in Gibraltar, a
Okay.
jurisdiction, known for its corporate secrecy laws.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little public information available about their personnel, and their listed phone number is inactive.
So we have NCL potentially misleading investors with the Bannatyne connection.
Right.
And then this shadowy firm, Westbrook Associates, also involved in promoting TCFGC.
Right.
It's starting to feel like we're uncovering layers of, a very intricate and potentially fraudulent operation.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
The lack of transparency surrounding Westbrook Associates adds another layer of complexity to this case.
Yeah.
And it raises further concerns about, where investor funds were actually going.
Yeah. It begs the question, were these funds ever truly invested in sustainable agriculture as promised? Or
Right.
were they channeled into some elaborate scheme for the benefit of those, running the show?
That's a question we need to consider.
Yeah.
And it brings us to, a critical point in our deep dive, understanding the potential financial misconduct at play.
Let's dive into that right after this quick message from our sponsors.
When we talk about, potential financial misconduct in a case like this, we're looking at, a range of possibilities, from misrepresentation of the company and its leadership to, potential misuse of investor funds.
So it's not just about whether TCFGC was actually engaged in sustainable agriculture.
Right.
It's also about how they handled the money
Yeah.
they received from investors.
Precisely. And the involvement of, Kawaja with his history of fraud and his financial troubles raises serious red flags.
Yeah.
Was he using TCFGC as a way to access and potentially misappropriate investor funds?
Right.
That's a question, investigators will need to address.
And then there's the role of NCL in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
They were responsible for promoting TCFGC to investors.
Right.
And yet they seem to have overlooked or disregarded some very, very basic due diligence.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Well, it's important to understand that the investment promotion landscape can be a bit of a Wild West.
Yeah.
While there are regulations in place, they're not always sufficient to prevent bad actors from taking advantage of loopholes and exploiting investors. And unfortunately, it's not uncommon for promoters to prioritize profits over proper due diligence.
So in their eagerness to attract investors and earn commissions, NCL might have turned a blind eye to Kawaja's questionable background and the lack of transparency surrounding TCFGC.
That's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
And then there's the use of, Duncan Bannatyne's name and image.
Right.
That's a classic example of a tactic designed to, create this false sense of security and legitimacy.
It plays on people's trust.
Right.
In a well-known figure,
Right.
they see Bannatyne's name associated with TCFGC and they assume it must be a sound investment.
Exactly. It's what we call the halo effect. People tend to transfer, their positive feelings about a celebrity or a brand onto something associated with that person or entity. And in this case, NCL was exploiting Bannatyne's reputation for their own gain.
It's not just about misleading investors.
Right.
It's also about potentially damaging Bannatyne's reputation.
Yeah.
He's built a career on being a savvy businessman.
Right.
And now his name's being linked to this potentially shady operation through no fault of his own.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why falsely using someone's endorsement is, not only unethical, but also illegal.
Right.
It can have serious repercussions for both the individual whose name is being used and for the company that's, engaging in this deceptive practice.
So we've got potential financial misconduct on the part of TCFGC and its leadership.
Yeah.
We've got questionable promotional tactics from NCL.
Right.
And then we've got this mysterious offshore firm,
Yeah.
Westbrook Associates.
Mm-hmm.
How does Westbrook fit into this whole picture?
That's one of the most intriguing and potentially troubling aspects of this case. We know very little about Westbrook Associates.
Right.
They're registered in Gibraltar.
Yeah.
Which is often seen as, a tax haven and a jurisdiction with, less stringent corporate transparency requirements.
So it's harder to trace their activities.
Right.
And to determine who's behind the company.
Exactly. And that raises concerns about whether, Westbrook was used as a vehicle to move investor funds offshore.
Mm-hmm.
potentially shielding those funds from scrutiny, or even, siphoning them off for personal gain.
So investors' money could have been routed through Westbrook,
Right.
making it much more difficult to track and recover.
That's a real possibility.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the need for greater transparency in the investment world, particularly when it comes to, offshore entities.
It's all starting to feel a bit like a financial thriller.
Right.
You've got a potentially fraudulent company,
Yeah.
misleading marketing tactics, and a shadowy offshore firm. What happens next? Where do we go from here?
Well, the next step is for investigators to, delve deeper into the financial records of TCFGC, NCL, and Westbrook Associates.
Okay.
They need to follow the money trail to see where investor funds went, and they need to determine whether any, laws were broken.
And what about the investors who might have been, caught up in this?
Yeah.
What should they do if they believe they've been, misled or defrauded?
Well, first and foremost, they need to gather all the documentation they have, investment agreements, promotional materials, any communication they've had with TCFGC, NCL, or Westbrook Associates.
Okay.
And then they should contact the authorities.
Mm-hmm.
The FCA and the SFO are the relevant bodies in the UK.
And what about seeking legal advice? Is that something they should consider?
Absolutely. It's crucial for investors who believe they've been, wrong to consult with a solicitor who specializes in financial misconduct and investment fraud.
The documentation. Reporting to the authorities.
Right.
And seeking legal advice.
Yeah.
These are the key steps for anyone who thinks they might have been affected by this situation.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that, time is of the essence.
Right.
The sooner investors take action, the better their chances of, recovering their losses and holding those responsible accountable.
It's a stark reminder that investing always carries, some level of risk. And that while there are, legitimate opportunities out there, there are also those who seek to exploit investors, for their own gain.
That's why due diligence is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Investors need to do their research, ask tough questions, and be wary of anything that seems too good to be true.
It's a message we can't repeat often enough.
Right.
Especially in today's world where, scams and financial schemes are becoming increasingly sophisticated.
Absolutely. Investors need to be vigilant. They need to be aware of the red flags, and they need to protect themselves from, becoming victims of financial misconduct.
And on that note, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the broader lessons we can all learn from this.
Okay.
For our listeners who are, thinking about investing or who are already active investors.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways from the TCFGC case? Welcome back, everyone. We've been unpacking a really complicated situation with TCFGC.
Yeah.
A company that initially seemed like a great investment in sustainable agriculture, but turned out to be much more troubling than it appeared.
Yeah, it's definitely a case that highlights, that dark side of the investment world and the importance of protecting yourself from, scams and financial misconduct.
So let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about some broader lessons we can all learn from this.
Sure.
For our listeners who are, thinking about investing or who are already active investors.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways from the TCFGC case?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that trust should never be a substitute for due diligence.
Okay.
Just because a company presents itself as ethical or sustainable or even uses a celebrity endorsement,
Right.
that doesn't mean it's a safe or legitimate investment.
It's like that old saying, don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. You got to look beyond the surface. You got to dig deeper. You got to ask the tough questions.
So what are some practical steps listeners can take to protect themselves? What kind of due diligence should they be doing before they hand over their hard-earned money?
Well, the first step is to, research the company and its leadership thoroughly.
Okay.
Check their website. Read their financial statements, look for independent reviews and news articles. Don't just rely on the information they provide, in their marketing materials.
And what about the individuals involved?
Yeah.
Should we be looking into their backgrounds as well?
Absolutely. In this age of information, there's really no excuse for not doing a background check.
Okay.
Look for any red flags, past legal issues, financial troubles, anything that might, raise concerns about their trustworthiness or competence.
So research the company, research the leadership.
Right.
What else should we be on the lookout for?
Be wary of high-pressure sales tactics.
Okay.
If someone is trying to rush you into an investment or is making unrealistic promises about, guaranteed returns, that's a major red flag.
And what about this whole, offshore entity thing? How can we know if our money is going to be handled responsibly and transparently?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Offshore entities can be legitimate,
Right.
but they can also be used to obscure financial transactions and make it more difficult to track funds.
Right.
If you're considering an investment that involves an offshore entity, proceed with extreme caution.
Okay.
And seek professional advice.
So it sounds like the key is to, be informed, be skeptical,
Yeah,
and to never be afraid to walk away from an investment if something doesn't feel right.
that's exactly right. Your gut instincts can be a powerful tool.
Yeah.
If something feels off or too good to be true, it probably is.
This has been a truly eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
We've gone from what seemed like a simple investment in sustainable agriculture to uncovering, layers of potential fraud,
Right.
misleading marketing,
hmm
and shadowy offshore dealings.
It's a stark reminder that the investment world can be a complex and sometimes dangerous place.
Yeah.
But with the right knowledge and a healthy dose of skepticism, investors can protect themselves from, becoming victims.
And if you find yourself in a situation where you think you've been, misled or defrauded,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to reach out for help.
Yeah.
Report it to the authorities
Mm.
and seek legal advice from a specialist.
Remember, you're not alone.
Yeah.
There are resources available to support you and to help you navigate these challenging situations.
Well said. A huge thank you to our expert guest for sharing your insights and expertise with us today.
Of course.
It's been an incredibly informative discussion.
It's been my pleasure. I hope this conversation, helps empower investors to make informed decisions and to stay safe in the financial world.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and as always, happy investing.